My name is Kara, I'm 28, and my family held a formal meeting to ceremoniously cut me off, right at the moment I became the CEO of a $100 million company. Before I tell you how my father's jaw literally dropped, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. It all started on a Tuesday, driving to my parents' house in a storm, both outside and in my head. The summons had come via a text from my mother that was as cold and brief as a Boston winter: family dinner tonight. 7 p.m. Don't be late. It wasn't an invitation, it was a subpoena. As I drove, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my best friend, Maya. You don't have to go, you know. But if you do, remember who you are. I managed a weak smile. Maya was the only one who got it. She was there when I made the decision that started this whole mess. I passed a billboard for Harvard, and a bitter laugh escaped my lips. That was the path my family had laid out for me: Ivy League, then law or finance. A respectable, predictable life that would look good in the family's annual Christmas letter. My brother, Ethan, had walked that path perfectly. He was the golden child. But I had seen the code. In the clean logic of Python, in the endless possibilities of a blank command line, I had found a language that spoke to me more than any legal brief ever could. So I chose MIT. My father, a man who measured the world in stock prices and social standing, called it the trade school down the river. The rift started there and only grew wider. They saw my passion as a phase, a quirky hobby. They didn't understand the nights I spent fueled by coffee and a singular vision, trying to solve a problem that had become deeply personal. It started with Maya's mom, watching her struggle to schedule appointments with specialists for her chronic illness. The system was broken, a maze of phone calls and waiting lists. That's where the idea for Secure Health was born, a platform to connect patients with specialists, optimized by AI. It wasn't just a business idea, it was a mission. Of course, my family never saw it that way. The week before the dinner, the universe decided to serve up a thick slice of irony. I was at a charity gala my mother had insisted I attend. I was standing near the bar when I overheard my father's booming voice. He was talking to an old family friend. "It's a headache, Bill," my father grumbled. "The advisory board I'm on, for MedCorp? We just lost the Mass General contract. A huge one. Snatched away by some aggressive, anonymous new player. Secure Health, they're called. Came out of nowhere." I froze, my glass halfway to my lips. MedCorp was our biggest competitor. He was talking about me. About my company. His friend shook his head. "Tough break, Richard." "It's more than tough," my father said, his voice laced with venom. "It's infuriating. Probably some kid in a hoodie who got lucky." I just stood there, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I wanted to scream, to laugh, to walk over and say, "That kid in a hoodie? That's your daughter." But I just turned and walked away. That's when I knew. The dinner wasn't just a dinner. It was an execution. And for the first time, I felt a strange sense of calm. I wasn't going there to beg for their approval anymore. I was going to resign. From the drama, from the disappointment, from the family that refused to see me. I arrived at 7 p.m. sharp. The house smelled of rosemary and old money. Ethan was already there, swirling a glass of wine, talking about a deal he'd just closed. "Kara," he said with a smirk. "Good of you to pull yourself away from your computer games." I just smiled. Wouldn't miss it. We sat down to dinner. The table was perfectly set, a battlefield of polished silver and crystal. My father carved the roast, my mother directed the conversation, and I felt like a ghost at the feast. They talked about Ethan's promotion, about their upcoming trip to Europe, about everything and everyone except me. My phone was on the table, face down. It wasn't rudeness, it was necessity. After winning the Mass General contract, I knew MedCorp would fight back. We were in a vulnerable stage, and I had told my assistant, Jenna, to call me, day or night, if anything escalated. My presence at this table felt trivial compared to the hundreds of employees and thousands of patients relying on me. Finally, after the plates were cleared, my mother folded her hands on the table. Her expression was serene, like a surgeon about to make a precise incision. "Kara," she began, "your father and I have had a long discussion. We love you, but we can no longer enable this lifestyle." My father cleared his throat, picking up the thread. "The family trust is meant to support productive futures. Your little project has gone on long enough. It's time you face the real world. So, we've decided we're cutting you off. Completely." There it was. The final blow. I looked at their faces, my mother's calm certainty, my father's stern resolution, Ethan's smug satisfaction. A strange quiet settled in my chest. I opened my mouth to tell them they were too late, to tell them I was setting myself free. But before I could speak, my phone vibrated, a harsh buzz against the polished wood. The screen lit up, "Jenna, urgent." A cold dread washed over me. This was it. I excused myself with a glance and answered, my voice low. "Jenna, what's wrong?" Her voice was tense, all business. "They're making their move. MedCorp's lawyers just filed an emergency injunction against our Mass General contract, claiming patent infringement. It's baseless, but it could tie us up for weeks. The hospital's legal team is on the line. They need your authorization, as CEO, to proceed with the counterfiling immediately. They need to know you're leading the charge." The world seemed to slow down. My family was staring at me, annoyed by the interruption. I took a deep breath. This was no longer about them. It was about my company. My team. My mission. I stood up, holding the phone to my ear, and looked directly at my father. My voice was clear, steady, and filled with an authority they had never heard before. "Jenna," I said, "what's the name of the rival company's lead counsel?" She told me. I repeated it out loud. My father's face went white. He knew that name. I continued, "Patch me through to the hospital's legal team." A moment of silence. "This is CEO Kara Mitchell of Secure Health." Ethan choked on his wine. My mother's serene mask finally cracked. "Authorize the counterfiling," I commanded. "Use every resource at our disposal. I want our response filed within the hour. Protect our contract. I'll be in the office shortly to handle the fallout." I hung up. The silence in the room was deafening. It was broken by the sound of my father's fork clattering onto his plate. He stared at me, his face a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. The Mass General contract. MedCorp. Secure Health. He connected the dots, his professional world violently crashing into his personal one. You're the CEO?" The first one to speak was not my father, but my mother, her voice a high-pitched, desperate whisper. "Kara, darling, why didn't you tell us?" But it was Richard, my father, who found his voice next, and it wasn't one of wonder. It was one of rage. "You deceived us. You sat here and you let us." I picked up my purse. The fear, the hurt, the years of feeling small, it had all vanished. "I didn't deceive you," I said, my voice as cold and hard as steel. "I just lived a life you never bothered to look at." I turned to leave, and my mother stood up, reaching for my arm. "Kara, please. We're a family." I pulled away gently. "No," I said, looking at each of them one last time. "We're not. I built my world without you. I'll continue to do so." And I walked out the door, leaving them in the ruins of their perfectly arranged evening. I didn't look back. 3 months later, I was standing on the balcony of my new apartment. It was a sleek, modern space overlooking the Charles River, a place that was entirely mine. Paid for not by a trust fund, but by code, caffeine, and sheer force of will. The air was filled with laughter. Inside, Maya was arguing with my first 3 employees, the ones who had been with me in a tiny, cramped office when secure health was just a dream on a whiteboard. We were celebrating. Not the money, not the Forbes article that came out last week. We were celebrating us. This was my family. The one I had chosen. Maya came out onto the balcony with 2 glasses of champagne. To the CEO, she said, her eyes sparkling. I clinked my glass against hers. So what's next? She asked. World domination? I laughed, a real, unburdened laugh. I was thinking about starting a small foundation, actually. To help young women in tech get their ideas off the ground. So no one can ever call their dream a little project again. I looked out at the city lights, the reflection of a world I had once felt so excluded from. I finally understood. The validation I had chased my whole life wasn't a prize to be won. It was a cage I had to escape. My freedom didn't come when my family finally saw my worth. It came the moment I realized I didn't need them to. My gaze fell on my laptop, open on the table inside. On the screen was a beautiful, messy blueprint of what came next. And I smiled. I was ready to build it. Thanks for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I felt like it needed to be told. My question for you is, have you ever had to prove someone wrong in a big way, or choose your own path against everyone's advice? I would genuinely love to read your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, you know what to do. Give it a like, subscribe for more, and maybe share it with someone who needs to hear that they are enough, all on their own.